Hello, Thomas the Hermit here, and we are talking about negation in prayer, or what is known as the apophatic in prayer, or what we could also term as the spirituality of the valley. Now, before you run away, the path, if God chooses to put you on this path, then you can't really fight it. Let's start by stopping the running. Let's not run away. I am Thomas the Hermit. I am a man of prayer, but I'm on social media. I make commentary about the church, and I also teach about contemplative prayer. And I'm leading a movement of lay people called the Humble Holy Laity so that they can become great prayer warriors in this time. We like to experience and know that God is with us and that He loves us and that He's taking care of things, and we like everything to go very, very well. You know, when I started out in my walk, and this was in 1980, when I was an 18-year-old man, I had these great experiences. I remember praying to get a particular kind of pizza. God fed me with that pizza. I remember walking along the road and I said, Lord, I really could use a ride right now. And somebody stopped right then and picked me up and gave me a ride. And I remember having these incredible gifts. You know, I was able to understand and look and have insight into what was going on with people. And I thought that I was going to live my whole life like that. I thought that everything was going to be like that, and I thought that all my troubles were over. And then, about a year after experiencing all this wonderful things from God, He turned the tables on me. All of a sudden, what looked like an easy road looked like, again, a difficult road. And to be honest with you, I got upset. You know, I got angry at God. Now, you might get angry at God too. I'm not saying getting angry at God, you know, he's pretty big. He can take our little bitty, you know, temper tantrums as long as we don't conjure up an attitude. You know, we don't want to have an attitude with God. You know, when God changes the game plan with us, do we respond or do we keep fighting against it? Now, I'm not telling you that when things are happening in your life that you're not supposed to do everything that you can to bring about the good. But if after everything that you've done to bring about the good and you're still not getting what you want or what you think you're supposed to have, then God might have you in a different place. Now, that different place could be the spirituality of negation or a prayer of negation. And as that implies, it's not a spirituality of sweetness in prayer or feeling loved by God. You know, in some extreme cases, one might actually feel like they've been abandoned by God. We're talking, of course, about the dark night of the soul or the experience of the dark night of the soul. Now, the dark night of the soul, I'm going to go ahead and read to you one of the most famous writings about the dark night of the soul, and it is the poem by John of the Cross. Let's go ahead and read this poem, and instead of trying to analyze this poem, which we're really not capable of doing, let's just listen to the words and reflect upon the fact that sometimes God works through the negation of. Okay, so let's look at this. One dark night, fired with love's urgent longing. Ah, the sheer grace! I went out unseen, my house being now all stilled. In darkness and secure, by the secret ladder disguised. Ah, the sheer grace! In darkness and concealment, my house being now all stilled. On that glad night, in secret, for no one saw me, nor did I look at anything with no other light or guide than the one that burned in my heart. This guided me more surely than the light of noon to where He was waiting for me. Him I knew so well, there in a place where no one appeared. O guiding night, O night more lovely than the dawn, O night that has united the lover with his beloved, transforming the beloved into his lover. Upon my flowering breast, which I kept holy for him alone, there he lay sleeping, and I caressing him. There in a breeze from the fanning cedars, when the breeze blew from the turrets, as I parted his hair, it wounded my neck with its gentle hand, suspending all my senses. I abandoned and forgot myself, laying my face on my beloved, all things ceased. I went out from myself, leaving my cares forgotten among the lilies. Now, the first thing that I want to say is that if you've ever done any reading of John of the Cross, you will see a big dichotomy between his poetry and when he begins to teach about the dark night. Now, what I'm trying to say to you is this. John was powerfully emotional. His poetry is ignited with passion and emotion. And it is influenced by the Spanish culture of passion. Okay? He has a passion for God. He has a love for God. He delights in the wonderful sweetnesses and experiences of God. In this particular case, he's saying that in the darkness, in the negation, in the lack of, he discovered a union with God that was much more profound and powerful. So that's what we need to be looking at. Now, there's two terms that we use when we're talking about the prayer of negation or the prayer of sweetness. The first is called apophatic. These are Greek terms. And apophatic is the negation of experiential sweetness. And katophatic is an experience of discovering God in many beautiful ways, like in a sunrise, or by the ocean side, or in a beautiful place in nature, or when you're praying and you're experiencing all these beautiful feelings of God's love and everything like that. And that is the Katophatic experience. And I hope God gives you a lot of Katophatic experiences. But what God will also do is he will draw you into the apophatic, the prayer of negation. And it is there that you grow in a much different way. The Katophatic, or the experience of sweetness in prayer, strengthens you. But then the prayer of the valley purifies you. And without the prayer of the valley, you can't be purified. And you need to be purified if God is going to draw closer to you. Now, that purification can oftentimes be very, very painful. What can that include? Well, that can include aridity in prayer. We're all concerned about aridity in prayer. My experience has been that the more I look into the emptiness of the aridity of prayer, I find God there. That's my experience. Now, I can understand if you don't, your sensitivity, or maybe you don't have the ability to sense that. But irregardless, if you're experiencing aridity in prayer, perseverance. In other words, whenever you're going through the prayer of negation, perseverance becomes very, very important. But a lot of times when I persevere in prayer, I find God there. Now, sometimes, granted you, I will have zero experience of him being present. Then I only find him through the eyes of dark faith alone. Meaning this, God is always present. Irregardless of what we think, he never abandons us. Or what we are experiencing, we are never abandoned. He is always there in the darkest things. You know, we say, oh, if God gave me the graces, I could be like a saint. Well, if you can't embrace the cross, how can you be a saint? Now, the cross is always something that scares us. You know, we always think, oh, these things are going to happen, and it's going to be, you know, this terrible suffering. But we don't realize that Jesus will help us to carry the cross. I've carried some crosses, but a lot of times I feel that it's like 70-30, like God's carrying 70% and I'm only carrying 30%. But I think it has to do with the capacity of what we think that we are capable of doing. Now, attachment to the world becomes a big issue. A lot of times we think that God is going to do something for us to fix the world or to deliver us, and make our lives better. He sometimes does that, but that's not God's main focus. His main focus is to bring us closer to himself and to make us holy. Now, he's not unaware, like if you're a mother or father, that you have needs. Take care of your children. He's not unaware of that. He's not unaware that you have needs. Doesn't it say in the scripture that your heavenly Father cares much more for you than a flock of birds? So God really, never abandons us. And I think that that's key. We need to understand that if we are going through difficulties, maybe we should rejoice a little bit, because we are being drawn into the same purification that other holy men and women have also been brought through. And we may want to consider that we might need that. Or we may even consider that maybe God has a special mission or calling. It has been my experience that God has many special missions for people, and most people don't do them. All right, so I'm just saying. So if we allow God's will to work in our life, and that becomes paramount, because I'm going along, and what does God want to make happen? Now, if he wants to take me into the dark night, then I'm going into the dark night. Now, how do I respond to that? Do I go in kicking and screaming and being angry? Or do I go in and say, like Mother Mary, be it done unto me according to thy will? What is my response to God? How do I respond when he brings me into the prayer of negation? Now, can the devil try to put us through stuff and is not the prayer of negation? Yes, he can. So whenever you're going through stuff, pray. Remember, Paul said he prayed 3 times for the oppression to leave him, and it didn't. And then the Lord said, my grace is sufficient for you. So, but there will be times when the devil is imposing things upon us that it is not God's will. It is always important to discern and test. Of course, with the demonic, the way you're going to test it is you're going to pray against those things that are happening. But if, like Paul, the oppression or problem is not lifted, then maybe grace is sufficient for you. Maybe that's the way that it's going to be. There are catastrophic occurrences in life. Catastrophic occurrences are the time to draw closer to God. I married into a family many years ago, and this little baby girl threw the gate of the pool and fell in and drowned. And we went and mourned the loss of this baby girl. It's a catastrophic occurrence. And I found that God was very, very powerfully there. Blessed are those who mourn. And it was true that God was very profoundly and powerfully there. He wanted to comfort us. He wanted to comfort us in this great tragedy. So no matter what is happening to you, you always need to allow yourself to draw closer to God and to trust him. Now, does that mean that evil becomes good? Evil never becomes good. But God can always bring good out of everything that happens. Now, does that mean that you're going to have some kind of super sanity in these? You may not. Sometimes life hurts us. Sometimes it messes us up. But we can always go back to the Lord and ask for his healing. But in the midst of catastrophic occurrences, that clearly could be a part of a dark night, clearly can be a part of the prayer of negation. What is the desert? Why did men and women go out into the desert? Again, it's the prayer of negation. In the desert is emptiness, it's wasteland, it's endless sand, it's hot and it's cold, it's inhospitable. You know, there are creatures there, there's snakes and things that could harm you, and bugs and different things out in the desert. The desert is the negation. It is the experience of negation. When you enter into the desert, you are looking to find God not through the glory and beauty of his creation, but you're looking to find a God who transcends all things. He is beyond all of this. And the person putting their trust in God can enter into an incredibly deep relationship by having a desert experience or actually physically entering the desert. Of course, there are still people that pray in the desert. There's monasteries in Egypt that are in the desert according to that particular spirituality. I'm talking about St. Anthony Coptic Church, the Coptic Church in Egypt. So entering into the desert or entering into a place of negation, there's different kinds of deserts, like a junkyard or even a garbage dump, or feeling exposed and vulnerable to the world, praying on the streets, or praying in the midst of a very bad neighborhood. All of these things can be a part of a desert experience. Now, the goal here is to strip away everything that you're attached to so that you learn how to be attached to God alone. God alone is the goal. Learning to be detached from everything except God alone is the highest goal, or one of the highest goals. It precedes spiritual marriage, or the greatest union you can have while here on this earth before you die. And that occurs through stripping away of all attachments to the world. That is one of the best ways to understand why God allows you to go through a valley of prayer. This is Thomas the Hermit. I hope this has been instructional for you. Say a prayer for me. I am praying for you, and I will talk to you later.